Hello my viewers and welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video, we take a look at a powerful display of self-reflection. In this video, palm-color individuals are taking the first steps towards understanding and dismantling articism. From a chance encounter at a dollar store to a thoughtful question about Malcolm X, these palm-color people are seeking knowledge and growth. Now they are recognizing that articism is not just a black issue, but a collective problem that requires collective action. They're acknowledging the harm caused by their own biases and the biases ingrained in the education system. Now, one palm-color lady dares to challenge a young black girl's attitude, only to realize that the girl's words are a reflection of the systemic articism that has taught her to distrust palm-color people. Another palm-color man seeks to understand how his peers were taught about Malcolm X, recognizing that education can be a powerful tool for change. And yet another lady confronts the concept of palm-color privilege, acknowledging the unearned advantages that have been afforded to palm-color people. With that said, let's take a look at these different videos. I will be right back.
This is a video that is very disheartening to have to make. It's really upsetting and disheartening, like I said. But yesterday afternoon, I was coming out of a Dollar General store, and there was a young girl about to walk in, and she couldn't have been any more than 12, maybe 13. And I was coming out, so I held the door for her. Well, she didn't say thank you. She kind of had an attitude, so I politely said, "You're welcome." So she turned around with a lot of sass, and she said, my mama told me I don't have to tell white people thank you for anything. And I kind of looked at her. I said, well, your mother is completely wrong. I was like, anyone that is being nice to you, that is being mannerable to you, you should be doing the same in return. The golden rule. She walks off. This is disheartening because as much as I know clearly that racism does still exist in our country, this is not the way to combat it. This is not the way for us to move forward. This is not going to solve anything. This is just not the way. And it is so sad to me that a young, innocent child, their parent is just tainting them with foolishness. And like I said, I'm fully aware that racism exists. I've spoke about it on my page many times. But as much as I know that it exists, I just know that this is not the answer. This is not going to get us anywhere. We as a society have to do better, especially with our babies. We do not have to continue this horrible just history that has happened in the United States. We can stop this. But teaching our children that type of foolishness is just not the answer. That's not it. Maybe we should try teaching our children to see people for who they are. Treat them the way that they treat you, versus just grouping everyone together in this big conglomerate. That is crazy. And like I said, I started not to even do this video because I know that a lot of people don't even like to talk about racism. We don't. We want to cover it up and act like it doesn't exist. And like I said, while I know that it does, this is just not the answer. Teaching your children things like that is not the answer. We will never get over racism like that. That's just not the way to do it. And I'm not going to tell you I have all the answers, but what I know is children are innocent and they only know what we teach them. That right there is just horrible.
White people, what do you know about Malcolm X? Don't scroll. More specifically, what were you taught about him in school? Or at home? 20-yard dash to the comments? Seriously, take a second, pause the video, and write what you were taught. This is a genuine question, and you really can't be held accountable for what you were taught in the school system. Now, if you held bias after that and you didn't educate yourself further, then absolutely. But what were you just taught in school? And if you did learn something different later down the road, how did that change your view? What was the information you learned? I ask this because I just learned new information that was readily available and out there since forever and a day. And when I was in school, when we talked about Black history as a whole, it was like 3 days collectively. And when we did talk about Malcolm X, it was always with Martin Luther King. It's almost as if they didn't independently exist as humans, but they were paired together as part of the teaching. And it's almost as if they were consistently pitted against each other. While Malcolm was being vilified to us. Was your experience the same?
White people, and if you're wondering why I said white people, it's because today I want to talk about white privilege. So for those of you who don't already know, the definition of white privilege is the inherent advantages possessed by a white person on the basis of their race as opposed to non-whites. Now I think it's important to address this because I have had so many white people say to me that white privilege doesn't apply to them because they grew up poor, because they grew up in an all-white area, they're not racist, or they've stood up for Black Lives Matter, they've been searched at an airport or stopped by the police, or they've struggled in life, or they have a black friend, co-worker, neighbour, fill in the gap. Now whether you struggle in life, or whether you grew up poor, or if you grew up in an all-white area, or even if you've been stopped at an airport, none of these things, if you're white, reduces your white privilege. Now, if you haven't seen Hello Privilege, It's Me Chelsea on Netflix yet, I highly recommend that you watch that. One of the big things that I took from that was that we have to stop looking to black people to solve racism, which is a white originated problem. So to finish off, there are no exemptions from white privilege. I'm anti-racist, I've been searched at an airport, I struggle, I have a biracial daughter, and yes, I still have white privilege. Just as a little PS for this video, if you want to do something with your white privilege, be actively anti-racist. It's not enough to be not racist in 2022. Be anti-racist. Peace out.
Now, ignorance of each other is what has made unity impossible in the past. Therefore, we need enlightenment. We need more light about each other. Light creates understanding, understanding creates love, love creates patience, and patience creates unity. Now, the majority of palm-color Americans consider themselves sincerely committed to justice for the racial slur. They believe that American society is essentially hospitable to fair play and to steady growth toward a middle-class utopia embodying racial harmony. But unfortunately, this is a fantasy of self-deception and comfortable vanity. And every single time they have been unable to identify the first quotes as belonging to Malcolm and the second to Martin. But it is not just a few students that have gotten it wrong. The American education system and most mainstream portrayals of Martin and Malcolm have been simplistic and sanitizing. Now, Martin is the perfect hero who preached nonviolence and love, and Malcolm the perfect villain who served as his violent counterpart, preaching hate and militancy. Now, the result is not just a dishonest reading of history, but a dichotomy that allows for Dr. King to be curated to make us more comfortable and Malcolm X to be demonized as a demagogue from whom we must all flee. Reducing these men to such simplistic symbols allows us to filter political programs according to how king-like they are. Hence, illegitimate forms of reconciliation and are legitimized through King, and legitimate forms of resistance are delegitimized through Malcolm X. Now, Malcolm was never violent, not as a member of the Nation of Islam, nor as a Sunni Muslim. But Malcolm did find it hypocritical to demand that black people in the United States commit to nonviolence when they were perpetually on the receiving end of state violence. Now, he believed that black people in the U.S. had a right to defend themselves and charged that the U.S. was inconsistent in referencing its founding fathers' defense of liberty for everyone but them. Now, when thinking of influential figures in the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr. probably comes to mind. Malcolm X too, but to a lesser extent, because from what people have been taught, Malcolm X actually slowed the progress, right? But not really. Although Martin Luther King Jr. was the face of the movement for many, both his ideas and Malcolm X's influenced the others before practically converging. While King Jr. is known for his pacifism, Malcolm X is often summed up in one belief: for black Americans to defend themselves against palm-color people by any means necessary. Now, this controversial belief easily pushed him past the level of digestible activism for palm-color people, a behavior that is repeated time and time again. For many palm-color liberals, racial sympathy only goes so far. Now, as much as palm-color people have been able to learn from Martin Luther King Jr., they have much to learn from Malcolm X as well, particularly in instances where peace has proven time and time again to be ineffective. King Jr. was the face of the Black rights movement that palm-color people could get behind, but Malcolm X was a strong proponent of self-advocacy within the Black community. The right to vote and exist was an easy applied for palm-color people to advocate for, as opposed to Malcolm X's idea of Black self-reliance. Now, we can go on and on and on, but just like this palm-color man has said, As a palm color person, what were you taught about Malcolm X, and what later did you find out about what you were taught and the new things that you learned? Now, coming to palm color privilege, having palm color privilege and recognizing it is not artistic, but palm color privilege exists because of historic, enduring articism and biases. Therefore, defining palm color privilege also requires finding working definitions of articism and bias. Now, as we witness the courageous efforts of some palm color individuals taking steps to confront articism and privilege in this video, it's clear that more needs to be done. We need more palm color people to school themselves on the harsh realities of systemic articism, implicit bias, and the legacy of palm color supremacy. Only through self-education and introspection can they begin to dismantle the deeply ingrained biases that perpetuate racial injustice. It's not enough to simply declare oneself an ally. True solidarity requires a willingness to learn, listen, and confront one's own privilege. The burden of education cannot solely rest on Black and people of color. It's time for palm color people to also take ownership of their own learning, to seek out resources, and to engage in difficult conversations. We have finally come to the end of the video, but what do my viewers have to say? Share your thoughts as well in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video.